Johnny, welcome to the first BaardBek Wrestling Pod. We've been speaking about this for a couple of months, trying to do this. And this will be the first long format podcast that I do. I'm not sure if there's any other in South Africa.
Let's check. Jamie, just pull up any other South African wrestling podcasts in South Africa, please.
Okay, Jamie's not sure. So, yeah, welcome.
Let's do it.
It's so good to be with you. I know previously a wrestler said, I'm your chommy, but they are totally wrong. We're not chommies, we're brothers. So what a privilege to have Johnny Palazzio with me on the first podcast. And we're going to talk about the landmark South African wrestling. We're going to talk about training and development, where you are very involved in regarding training and trying to get big guys like me to roll. But before we start with the industry questions, I think I know what your answer is going to be. And I'll maybe say something like, who is your favorite wrestler of all time?
You know this. It's Bret Hart.
They don't know.
Bret the Hitman Hart.
The best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
That is 100% a fact.
What is it about Bret Hart that so fast in your minds did you say it's Bret Hart?
I don't know. I think in a time when you saw all these big guys with all these out there gimmicks and stuff, and Bret Hart was wearing pink, but yet he was one of the most technical guys at the point, I think. And I don't know, just something just radiated towards him. I mean, you guys like flamboyant, like Macho Man and Shawn Michaels and these guys, but I don't know, Bret Hart was just the guy, he was just the man for me. I mean, like, I wish I could have shared a locker room with him.
I still got an action figure of Bret Hart that
I had a million of them.
I've got one of him and Shawn Michaels. My guy was always Razor Ramon.
I loved Razor.
Uzi Machismo. He was such a cool. What was the moves? What specifically, are there any moves that you specifically like that Bret did? I'll tell you what's mine of Bret, which I love to see him do. But what was for you one or two of his special moves?
I used to like the second rope elbow drop. That for me was, I don't know, I just always, the sharpshooter was cool. His punching was next level. Bret always had a good punch on him. I try to mold the way I punch, the way that Bret punched. But yeah, I always used to love his leg drop and his second rope elbow drop.
There's certain things like, the thing is, Bret Hart made things look so amazing, which is like, I think is, and you will maybe can confirm that, but his fundamentals you have to do when you wrestle, and that
100%.
punching, the way he just sold his punches and did it was so clean.
Bret is one of the best. Still is good.
Still today. So I'm not even thinking sharpshooter when I think Bret. I think the punches. Then his corner kick stomps that he did.
Yeah.
The way he sold that with his hair, and did the whole thing. And there was another, where you make me sometimes think of Bret, not the best in the world, the best he will be, but he did the front corner bump.
The first time I did it, it was very intimidating. Like the first time I did it,
I've seen you once do that, and I was like, yeah buddy.
Yeah. The first time I did it, I was like, I don't know if this is a good idea. But yeah, that was like just a tribute, if you want to call it that, to Bret.
Just the whole way where he went in and it's like he fell back as he was dead.
Yeah.
But I think he was probably basically dead, because that couldn't be an easy bump to take, or whatever you want to call it. So that's just, we've spoken so much about wrestling and stuff, but I think maybe for someone who's looking for the first time at a podcast where we're talking about South African wrestling, starting off with someone who you looked up to and maybe some of the moves and stuff. But we in South Africa, we've got a whole different wrestling scene here. You've been in it as a wrestler. I don't even want to ask you how long.
I think it's about 23 maybe. I think
23.
23 years could be.
Yeah, that's a long time.
It's a very long.
It's half a lifetime.
That's more than half my lifetime.
I grew up in Port Elizabeth, so I grew up with wrestling. That time when I was a kid,
Veste
was Van der Stations. Port Elizabeth was massive. I was there in the Feather Market Hall when Tornado took off his mask. I was sitting on the stage there watching as a little kid. So for me, growing up seeing wrestling, and my uncle wrestled, Willeboer Matthias. And I always grew up with my mom talking about Jan Wilkins. I say Gunther is like the Jan Wilkins of today. He makes me think of him. But for a long time, I haven't been at wrestling since like when I met you, I think 7 or 8 years ago when you bought a PlayStation game.
Yeah.
And then I started going again because I always saw the poster or that banner in Goodwood Wrestling. And I was always like, I want to go. But can be a bit intimidating just going to a place alone because nobody around me was into wrestling. Fortunately, I met you. Fortunately, my wife will watch wrestling with me and I can talk to my wife wrestling, which is like lekker. But I've seen changes in the South African wrestling since I was a kid. But thankfully, I haven't seen too much of what makes South African wrestling special. So if I ask you to describe the state of South African professional wrestling right now, if we've got maybe someone from outside of South Africa watching us by chance and in a couple of sentences.
Oh, we do. There is definitely people watching.
So what would you say is the state of South African wrestling at the moment?
I would say it's at a very sensitive stage. For a while, South African wrestling was, I would say, stagnant. It was just, people churning out the same stuff over and over. It was very stagnant. But up until recently, there has been a spark. There has been growth. I know we've been working on a very big project for the past, I think 2 years now. So that's almost coming to fruition. But at this point in time, I think I want to say this in the nicest possible way without stepping on any toes. You know what? I'm going to step on toes. I don't care.
Do it.
So
They can come
I've been
the problem.
I've been wrestling long enough. I've done a lot more for this business than this business will ever do for me. So when I say something, it holds a lot of water, regardless of what Piti or Tommy out there would ever want to think. So at this point in time in pro wrestling South Africa, a lot of the crap has been sifted out in a way, if you want to call it that. I said a long time ago, I said that those that were meant to be in this business will be in this business come 5-6 years from now. And I said that 5-6 years ago. And you can see it happening now where overnight professional wrestlers have fallen away. And they're always going to fall away. If you start a promotion and you go and pick 20 youngsters to try and do shows within the space of 6 months, it's never going to work. Training a guy, if I had to take a guy and train him to be a good singles wrestler, someone that could go out there and work, it would take me about 1.5 years, 2 years. And I don't care how quick he picks up on the game. I don't care how quick he hits the ropes or, he does everything great and he can do flips and all this nonsense. Being a worker is not about just doing the fundamental basics. It's about being able to do more than the fundamental basics. That's what makes a good wrestler.
Would I be wrong if I say it's also about doing the basics very good?
It's about
but not just doing it.
It's about doing more than the fundamental basics. Like you could get a guy that can do all the basics, 150%, but he can't wrestle. Then you got a guy that might not be able to do all the basics, but he's a great worker. He understands, he's got ring presence, he knows how to work the areas, he knows his timing, he's selling, that kind of stuff. That all plays a big, big part. So to learn all of that to understand that doesn't just come over a space of like a year and a half. That takes time. And I do not understand how anyone can put a guy in the ring that's been in there 3 months to 6 months, even under a year, and call that guy a wrestler. And then for that guy to turn around and say that he's a wrestler, that is the biggest problem that we got here in South Africa, and is going to continue to be a problem.
Yeah. I think what I'm hearing from you is like, and that's what I experienced.
Come at me, bro. Come at me. I really couldn't care.
No, I'm not coming at
Not at you. Not you. I'm saying if it's out there that wants to disagree, come at me.
What I've been experiencing just with the couple of times I've been there, it's not just about the moves. There's like this whole package about the psychology of stuff. And I'm like someone who really likes to know, why am I doing it? And I remember, I think I know a bit about wrestling because I've watched it my life. I've been backstage a bit at AWA, but it's so easy to forget stuff. So there was a certain move that you had me do, and I said, but why do I need to do that? I'm a big guy. And you're telling me you're not doing it for you. And I think not a lot of people understand that, because if we're talking about the South African scene, I think one of the biggest challenges we have at this moment is what we're seeing on DSTV and AEW and WWE. Now, I know you're not a fan of that. Was a fan. I normally just watch podcasts and stuff about that now. It's much easier to digest. But people see that and they think that's wrestling.
Yeah.
So what makes wrestling in South Africa different than the rest of the world?
Well, if you look at AEW, AEW has got a brand, and it's got a definite style of how they do things. They do things different to WWE. You can clearly see there's a difference in the two packages. When you look at South African wrestling, we are a lot more raw. Obviously, we don't have the sponsors like yet. We don't have the backing as such to quit day jobs and do this a full-time thing. There's no one in South Africa that can do that yet. So at the end of the day, I know there's people out there, there's guys out there in the South African circuit that say they use the term indies. Now, this is what really grates my cheese. It's like they don't understand what the word indies mean. In South Africa, there is no indies. There's no contracted wrestlers. There's no indie circuit. There's no difference between being contracted and being on the indies, the independents, where you are independent. That's why they call it the indies, because you're wrestling for yourself as a product. In South Africa, if you want to say indies, then we're all indie wrestlers. There's no one in South Africa that is a professional wrestler that will do this professionally, where you can rely on the income as a source of income. So when they talk about the indies in South Africa, it really is like cringe, because we don't have a WWE. I mean, yeah, there is federations out there that are in South Africa that are contracting wrestlers, but the contract is worth it. Whatever toilet paper you want to chuck down the toilet. So there's no contract. I can't go out there and contract 40 people and say, okay, you are my wrestlers alone, because if they want to go wrestle somewhere else, I can't stop them from earning an income. And this is, myself and Sean have been talking about this for all these years, and we laugh every time they're like, yeah, but it's the indies, and no. We're all on the indies. That's the difference between WWE and the indies. WWE contracts the wrestlers, they pay them a salary, they get paid salaries. Indies, you work show to show. So in South Africa, you're asking what's the difference in our product?
I just quickly want to say this. So as I understand the indies in the States, it's somebody who earns a living or a kind of living from wrestling without being contracted.
Yeah, they're independent.
So
you might find they're not even contracted.
Yeah.
They don't even belong to a specific.
Yeah, you'll see a motion jump around. Then they are at something like GCW or whatever you.
Exactly, they are independent.
Independent. I want you to continue, but I just want to put this in there. Do you think then that if we look back many years ago in the States, we're kind of still more like the territories was that time?
Yeah. But even in the territories, guys were contracted to certain territories. Like you would phone me and say, listen, can I use Johnny? And I say,
You call your name 3 times.
yeah. So like in South Africa, at this point, there's, I think, maybe 2 federations in Durban. There is, well, I know I'm gonna get heat for this, but I think there's 1 or 2 in Joburg now. There was like 20 at one point. Not that much, but I mean, there was like a lot. Cape Town, at this point, I think we've got 1 or 2. So if you're talking South Africa, you're talking maybe 8 federations, whereas 2 of those federations are maybe something that I would say is worthwhile looking at, where, you know, these guys are the guys that are putting in the work properly at training, being trained properly by guys that know what they're doing. So the difference with us and everywhere else is we're a lot more raw. I would say it's a lot more raw.
Yeah. Well, speaking to some of the younger guys at AWA, I'm always like, I hear their dreams and the stuff they want to do, especially type of moves. But then it's like, just remember, you can do that flippy stuff, but if you break your neck, you'll have to. And I think that's a big problem because people, let me first say, I have to commend the Cape Town audience for the way they look at wrestling.
Oh yeah.
They're not there just for like big flippy stuff, and they can appreciate the rawness of what AWA is.
They come for the storyline.
Yeah,
which is awesome.
And I think that's a big difference in South Africa. Do we have talent that can do stuff like AEW, WWE? For sure, but I don't think that's South African. Because I don't think we can help those guys recover.
See, the problem is when you deviate from what pro wrestling really is, and that's entertaining and telling a story. When you deviate from it and you start doing a move expo, so people come there just to see these moves, you're going to get to a point where the shock factor is gone and you're not going to be able to wow them anymore. So now what do you have to do? You have to go start drawing blood. Then you have to start doing thumbtacks. You're going to have to start doing barbed wire baseball bats. You're going to have to start doing all these things to try and keep that audience locked in, because they've seen this every week in and week out. And it comes to a point where it's just 2 guys hitting each other with baseball bats.
And if you do it for five months in a row, then 2 drops of blood's not going to be enough. It's got to be buckets.
They want more. It's just, once you deviate from telling a story into just doing moves, you're going to have a problem.
Bleeding doesn't help wrestling if it doesn't help the story. For me, like...
What are we doing here? Yeah. If we're not telling a story, then what are we doing here?
Dean Ambrose bleeds in every freaking match now. And I'm like, whenever I see him bleed, I'm like, oh.
Whenever you mention that name, I'm like,
yeah, calm down, Johnny. Take a breath, get
easy in my chair.
Well, on the next podcast, we'll maybe talk about modern day guys around the world that you do appreciate. But yeah, that's became his identity and that's all he does. But okay, let's move on. So South African wrestling are more, you use the word raw. I want to use, or kind of say it like, South African wrestling is still what professional wrestling was and is. That's why I said earlier, like, for me, it's changed since I was young, but it hasn't changed that much. So about that, listen, my experience is AWA. So anybody who wants to like take shots at me, come at me. But there's that realness in the art form of professional wrestling that you can do what you do without having to do the crazy stuff. But that's also, I think, again, the crowd, what the crowd comes for. And that's the thing, what you said, if you're doing it once, you have to do it over. if Revive goes and does a spot where he jumps off the Paris Civic Centre balcony, they're always going to expect stuff like that. And I think that's what I mean with it's still authentic.
Look, up until about 10 years ago,
Yeah.
I was still doing the climbing to the top rope and jumping outside through a table.
Yeah.
I was still doing that.
Yeah.
And then eventually I just said to myself, this is like shadow. This is like cheap pop, you know? Yeah.
But I also think that people that watch wrestling are getting smarter. Like one of my favorite matches of you, and I've told you that, was you and Mr. Money, the grudge match. It was boom, 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 done. It wasn't like 1,000 kickouts. The move that finished the match in any scenario would finish the match. And I think you get to spaces where it's like one kick out to another, and we can talk another time about finishes in wrestling in the world that doesn't even mean anything anymore.
Yeah, no comment.
So
look, that match, I agree. Like that match, you know, after we pulled that off and we went behind the curtains and stuff, you know, we didn't realize how special that was. Like we never even spoke about it afterwards. I mean, he just came up to me. He's like, "You good?" I was like, "I'm good." I was like, "You good?" He's like, "He's good." And that was it. And only I would say only a couple of days after when people were talking about it. I know you were talking about
I told you.
and I was like, yeah, you know, I was just like, and then like even Shanae, she came to me say, "Listen, people like really blowing up about this match." And then when I went it back and watched it, I was like, all right, that was pretty special.
That was, if you ask me now, I think I've been coming to AWA for like 4 years now. And that's not because you're my brother, not blood brothers. But if you ask me what's my favorite match in AWA, what I've seen, hands down that one.
Yeah, that's also, I got to be, that match is up there with, in my top 10 favorites for me personally.
Yeah, that was, so shout out to Mr. Money as well for his part in that.
I make him look so good. I make him look so good.
Yeah, the problem with him is they're playing his song at rugby now, and then I'm like, Mr. Money's song.
I think that's why he retired. He's like,
watching rugby. Yeah. Like, I don't even know how to do that move, so I'm too white for this. Okay, so we've talked about rawness in South African wrestling. We talked about the state of wrestling. But like I said, for me, wrestling did change a bit, but not that much. So in the end, well, you can either say there was improvements or we went backwards. Do you see any improvements in South African wrestling at the moment?
yeah,
Or do you see
100%. I use AWA as a benchmark for that. Because if you watch the stuff that we put out on ETV, and then you watch what we're putting out now, it's chalk and cheese. And I'm not just saying that because of the guys that were involved then and the guys that's involved now. I think that the product has evolved. It's like chalk and cheese from what we used to have to what we're doing now. And it's not just because some of the guys are doing like, you know, we don't even do high flying moves at that point. I mean, if you watch our shows, there'll be one guy doing a 450, one guy doing a somersault to the outside, there's a moonsault. And only now, recently, after all these years, we got a guy doing a shooting star press. So if you look at it, it's not a case of us doing all these flips and all this crazy stuff. We've actually toned down on that. There's no more chairs, no more lighter fluid, no more thumbtacks, none of that stuff. We don't do hardcore matches. We are generally hardcore, we're at full contact, but we are not hardcore as in weapons and stuff like that. So we've taken that out of, it was unnecessary because once again, you know, you got that AEW scenario. So it's all about the story, telling story. We're there trying to get people involved in the story with characters and building up from that.
I think my ultimate hardcore match will be a hardcore match with jelly babies. Jelly babies. They stuff it into my mouth when they want to pin me. But
I've seen a lot of hardcore matches across South Africa, and yeah, no comment.
But I also want to say from my side, I hear what you're saying about when you were on ETV and you went on after 10. Which we all watched.
Yeah, just FYI.
It wasn't
on, not on a Saturday night.
Not on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
But I think there's definitely progression. If I look at when I started going to AWA and where it is now, But then also, and I'm not saying you're saying this at all, if you look at the Springboks of 1995, who won the World Cup, and you compare them with the Springboks we have now, it's a much different team because the sport has changed.
Yeah, it's evolution.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're seeing in South Africa, even if it's...
And sometimes, like, you get the cricket team who's gone backwards. I mean, it's...
But if I see like the evolution of it or the progression, I think in South Africa we've got a purer line of wrestling. It's not... We still got professional wrestling. Other countries have sports entertainment.
yeah, I'll go with that.
It's for me more like I'm watching like athletes compete and do something. And I want to say, if anybody ever thinks that what goes on in the ring is easy, oh boy, I've did my roles. That makes you wanna, yeah, okay. You started teaching me how to do lockups.
Yeah.
Not too bad, but what a mind mess.
Yes, 100%.
And then dear Ed took me before the last show and said, just try and run the dopes a bit. And I was like, but my feet doesn't want to work this way.
Yeah.
And the next morning, my wife asked me, why is your hip so blue? And I'm like, oh, it's probably the ropes, because the bit I did wasn't that sore, but people think that's a rope. It's not rope. So I think that whole thing is people doesn't really understand it. And it was some of the best moments in my life yet, probably except my marriage and stuff, just starting to do at my age what
We had to say that, by the way.
yeah. But she knows that. She knows that, Cliffy. You get. But starting to do it at my age, even knowing, I'm gonna say it, knowing a bit more. It was like, and like I told you that day, I figured out professional wrestling is doing the unnatural in a natural way.
I want to tell you something right now, and I'm going to be honest with you. In South Africa, if there is, say, 60 guys that's active across South Africa, from Cape Town to Joburg, there is only 5 guys that really get it. I'm not saying it's me, I'm not saying it's anyone. I'm just saying across South Africa, there is only 5 guys that get it. And once you get it, once that penny drops, and I remember exactly when the penny dropped for me and how this whole thing works. And we were on ETV. It was in Goodhope Center. I was in a tag match. It was myself. It was myself and Viper, I think it was, against Ultima Wolf and Nitro. And the penny dropped midway through the match. And I had people throwing sweets at me because they were so upset with me. And when I got backstage, I never forget, Sean came to me and he looked at me and he was like, what was that? That was next level. So I said, I get it. I understand. I get what this is all about. It's not about me. It's not about me. The minute you walk through that curtain, it's not about Johnny Palazzio. I'm Johnny Palazzio, but it's not about me. It's about whoever it is that I am facing. If I'm facing...
Someone watching doesn't know this, but you're the most frustrating person to talk wrestling to, but also one of the most insightful people to talk wrestling to. Because I'll come to you and I'm like, did you see that? That was so good. And then you were like, pippy op my batterij. That's what
I know.
overseas people piss on my batteries.
I know I'm bad.
No, it's not bad, but you know how much I learn of it.
Yeah, I get it. It's
because you're not a fan of wrestling, but you are a connoisseur of wrestling, something like that.
Listen, let me put it this way. It's
That's not dissing you. That
no.
you're
I get what
compliment.
you're saying. I get what you're saying. But it's like when you get to a point, if you're involved in something and you have built something and you have got an idea as to this is exactly why I'm so petty. And like a normal person will come say, yo, that match was unbelievable. And I'd go, but like, no, I've got numerous problems with that match. And then I will go and sit with the guys that just had that match and I will tell them, this is what my issues are. And it's such small stuff, but it's so petty that I want them to understand that it's the small things that make the bigger picture. And that is where I've been focusing on when it comes to me as a product. Like over the years, I've chipped away all these little lazy, stupid things that I was doing. And I'm not a finished product, and I'm not the best wrestler in South Africa. But I like to think that when I'm wrestling, I look different to what other people are doing. And there's a reason why I'm petty. And it's like when you see certain things, it takes away. It's like a magician. Before he was a magician, he used to love going to magic shows and looking at all these tricks. But when he's learned, and when he knows he's better than most of the magicians out there, he's like, why am I even there? So it's not a case of like I don't like watching wrestling. I switched off after a point where I was like, okay, the stuff they're putting out now is completely not what I believe in. The golden era of Bret Hart and those guys and whatever. I would say after Attitude Era, I was like, that's me, I'm done. That's me. I'm sorry. I can't watch this nonsense that's on now. And I was
Took the puppies away, you were out.
yeah, well, it wasn't even about the puppies and stuff. It was just, it was
about the puppies.
yeah, it was like once they got to that point, you're not going to get bigger characters than Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker and Kane. And, even that Kane Undertaker Brotherhood thing was pushing it. I was like, I'm trying to hold on. I'm trying.
But there was a good story in that, but I think the way they did it. But yeah, then if we go to Stone Cold in again,
It was just like, I know everyone wants to like talk about wrestling and I'm just like, listen, I hate wrestling.
I think you mentioned Stone Cold, and I think why so many people like Stone Cold is because he was the guy next door basically kicking ass. That was what he was. His character was like drinking beer, smashing glass.
Look, it's like this. It's like if you are Cristiano Ronaldo, do you think he likes to sit and talk about soccer if someone comes up to him and they say, hey, soccer.
He's got money to spend.
That dude is like, listen, I don't want to talk soccer because of the crap that I'm seeing.
Money to spend, so he doesn't want to talk soccer. You have money to make, so you don't want to talk wrestling. It's the difference.
I don't know. It's just, like I don't watch wrestling. And I know I say it like myself and Magic, Wesley, we he's an encyclopedia of wrestling. He's a guy that you could go to with any question. Even Revive, he's like a guy you can go to with anything and they will be able to tell you like wrestling. And I'm like, I didn't even know he's on the circuit. I didn't even know like who's champion at WWE. Like I don't even know. This thing with John Cena, I didn't even watch the match. I'm like, thanks John for 21 years.
I'll at some point make a TikTok about that, what I thought about it and what I saw. So if you follow me on TikTok, you'll see that. See, I'm getting into this podcast thing, eh? Follow me on TikTok, like and subscribe, YouTube. Gooi geld as julle wil. But this brings me to another thing, training and development in South Africa. Now, you said you'll go down with people, this, and this, ne? And I think that's the thing where it comes in that you're a coach. Inside of you, you're a coach, and that's why you watch a game or a fight, in your case, and you say, okay, that worked, but that didn't work, didn't. So we have to look at the stuff that didn't work. And I think you're a coach. You're my coach. You're a lot of guys' coach. There's a lot of knowledge at AWA from some of the, let's call them younger guys. And the one evening I was just sitting there and I told you, I'm learning so much just from listening and watching. But I think that's where the coach in you come in. So I totally understand when someone is like, oh, it was a great match. You were like, because I remember when I coached rugby, people would always say, did you see that try you did, or that boo was so good? And I was like, yes, this team sucked today. Fortunately won sometimes, but wasn't good. So I understand that part. So I want to talk to you about challenges in South Africa, about training and development. When I the first time came to a training session of you guys, so I don't know if you want me to talk about this or cut this out of the interview, you would say, let's go. AWA doesn't have a ring where they're practicing. Listen, if you people that know, they practice on this gym mats. Now, try being, when I started 191 kilograms and doing a somersault, that's nothing. But there's other big guys and the smaller guys doing moves on that stuff. I think that brings a toughness in that, not that the ring is much softer, but there's a different mentality thinking about, I'm doing this on the floor with a mat on than doing it at wrestling. It's almost like you're going to your theater where you sing in the shower and you go into the...
It's like that movie Dodgeball. Do you ever watch Dodgeball?
Yeah.
And Chuck's a wrench. He says,
Yeah.
if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. That's how I
You
am.
can bump on the floor, you can bump in a ring.
There we go.
So what's the challenges? And I think unique challenges that wrestlers have with training in South Africa, apart from not having normal facilities, maybe, but you can extend on that. Maybe we can get someone who can give us a build.
Listen, like when I started out, and I'm not going to sit here and try to paint a picture of me being the best wrestler in South Africa or the hardest wrestler in South Africa or whatever the case is. And I don't care who thinks what, but I'm going to be honest with you. When I started, it was absolutely brutal. It was absolutely brutal. I used to wake up, and I tell this story all the time, and it's the God's honest truth. I used to like wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning. My girlfriend at that time used to have to help me up to go to the bathroom. I used to pee blood. Like, it was brutal. And that in itself weeded out a lot of guys. Like, I started with a group of like, I think 14 or 15 guys. And after 3 weeks, it was just myself and I think Oz who was left. And I remember getting to the training and he was looking at me and I was looking at him and he goes, is this it? I'm like, this is going to be rough. This is going to be rough. And, you know, being trained by Sean Kuhn was one of the biggest blessings. I think I hope I don't take it for granted ever, because he's not only one of the most amazing people you will ever meet in your life, like one of the most genuine people, he was also one of the best coaches that you could ever possibly hope for. Sean, and I say this not because I love the guy, but because it's a fact. Sean was one of the most undiscovered treasures in pro wrestling. He could have easily been on WWE. Easy.
Very, very.
He toured all over Europe. He wrestled guys like The Undertaker, British Bulldog, those guys. He's wrestled them all. If someone saw him, they would have put him in WWE and he would have been there today coaching, because he's just phenomenal. He's wrestling him was one of the greatest highlights of my career. And I'm so thankful that I've got to work with him in the ring, besides being out there, but in the ring. I had some very fun Listen, some fun matches, but some bumps that I would like to forget.
I was fortunate to see Sean as a young guy in school still. I was in Port Elizabeth. I was like timekeeper for one of his title matches against Warrior. Two colossal guys.
Listen, Warrior, if you meet Sean, you're like, geez, this is a big guy. But when you meet Warrior, you're like, oh my gosh, this is a big, big, big guy.
Johnny, I was like, I walked behind.
And Jeff is a preacher as well, eh?
Yeah, I walked behind the stage curtains at that show because I was fortunate I was part of the timekeeping. And here stood this giant in the sky. I was
ridiculous.
And as a schoolboy being part, when Paul Jordan was like the ring announcer, we knew him and he always had me involved and stuff. Holding that title belt that they fought for, that was like my WWE moment. So I was fortunate to see Sean when he was like, I don't think Sean ever left his prime, but I think when he was maybe at his prime and doing, it was... I saw on YouTube the other day some of the wrestling where you and Sean were in the ring. I don't know, it popped up onto my feed. And I'm like, yes, what a guy we had that never got to where he actually deserved to be.
100%.
But what he's giving back to South African wrestling now. I was fortunate to see Sean as a young guy in school still. I was in Port Elizabeth. I was like timekeeper for one of his title matches against Warrior. Two colossal guys. Listen, if you meet Sean, you're like, geez, this is a big guy. Johnny, I was like, I walked behind the stage curtains at that show because I was fortunate I was part of the timekeeping. And here stood this giant in the sky. I was ridiculous. And as a schoolboy being part, when Paul Jordan was like the ring announcer, we knew him and he always had me involved and stuff. Holding that title belt that they fought for, that was like my WWE moment. So I was fortunate to see Sean and how strict he is with packing chairs in straight lines. That's how strict he is with the ring as well.
Yeah.
And what goes on there. So
And because of him, as exactly Sean, because of Sean, we are probably the best product in South Africa, on the African continent. And I don't care who has a different opinion. But it was because of that and the way he's instilled all these little things that it now ripple effects to where we are today. So
for my mother, Jan Wilkins and their generation was the standard. For me, if I look, the standard, one of them is Donnie Voges, brilliant, and Sean Kuhn. Those would be my two guys from my era that I will say is, they were just like, those were my two guys. So challenges with the wrestling venue, ring space. Is it just the Cape Town thing? Is it the South Africa?
well, some of the other guys up country are very spoiled.
Yeah,
They've got rings and training facilities and whatever the case is. So, hey, listen, is what it is. We'll just keep doing what we're doing, and that's the way it works.
So if someone by any chance comes along and sees the first BaardBek Wrestling Pod, if Coach Johnny would have to say, if there's someone out there that can help with this to improve the AWA training, so some, let's say your needs.
I don't know, because like this is an argument that we're having. And myself and Revive argue about this all the time because he feels, and I look, look, fair enough. There is certain things you can only train in a ring, but I feel that, it's not necessary at this point in time. It'd be nice to have the ring up maybe once or twice a month, just to work on certain corner spots and stuff like that. But at this point in time, I don't think it's necessary. But I mean, like if anyone's got a hole out there that they're willing to like lease or let us use, then let's go for it. Let's put the ring up and do it. But I mean, I think that's what sets us apart. Is the boys are hard there. I mean, you've seen it firsthand. The boys are hard. The girls and the boys are hard.
Yep. We've got to start talking girls now before Nikki Vex is on my TikTok again. I hate TikTok. I just want to say that here, but I'm doing it for the kids. Before Nikki Vex gets on my case again about something. What a talent, ne?
Yeah, listen, she I don't think she realizes what kind of magic she possesses at this point in time. So
I girls attitude casino. If you start,
that's gonna be great. That's not an act either. That's
not an act.
yeah.
So if I can, what I'm hearing from you, let me rather say that is, even though it is difficult without a ring and all that stuff, you are pretty content with what you guys have.
100%.
And you make it work.
Well, you can see by the product itself. So
that's a South African thing, yeah. We make things work, what we have.
Yeah.
Want hulle weet nie wat ons weet nie.
Please.
JP, I'm going to get you to speak Afrikaans on this podcast soon. But I think there is something in South Africans that the more difficult it gets, the bigger the opportunity for us is to get about it.
That is a South African trait.
Yeah.
I mean, we South Africans wake up every day and they get grinded on. I'm not going to get political. I'm not going to get religious or anything like that. But, South Africans, regardless of skin color, we wake up every day and it's just like, okay, we here now. Let's just get it done.
The one thing that's always stood out to me, even when I just started hanging around there one evening coming to have a look at the training, is, and being fortunate enough to be there from the morning, setting up ring and all that stuff, is the values you and Sean bring to the younger guys. Like I would tell any person who's got older children, who's just thinking about trying to wrestle or getting involved in this crazy industry we call pro wrestling, the values. And that's after the first evening when I was there, I went to my wife and I said, you must see the way they teach the young guys. And I think that's very, very valuable. And probably at the other wrestling federations, hopefully also. I can also only speak of AWA. Hopefully I'll one day have opportunity to maybe go visit someone in Gauteng or Durban and see how they do it. But that was for me, above anything else, was for me the standout. And I want to, is the right English word, commend you and Sean for doing that, in investing in our country into young guys' life, more than just investing in them as wrestlers.
Yeah. Like I said, this all stems from the top. It all stems from Sean. I refuse to take any credit for anything with regards to the training and the morals that's been instilled. That all comes from Sean. And throughout the years, we've sifted through a lot of the bad apples in the locker room. We've gotten rid of a lot of guys who weren't on the same page as the rest of us, and you can see how tight our locker room is. And we're here today because of a tight locker room. There's nothing that I myself have done. It's all from Sean. It all stems from Sean. I'm just merely the guy that's the voice piece of the morals that's been handed down. I mean, I'm not taking any credit for anything. I refuse to.
You talked about us as South Africans having to every day wake up and know we've got, doesn't matter where you are, where you're from, you've got some battles. You have
100%.
If you look at the AWA locker room, if you look at, let's call it all locker rooms in South Africa, what's the type of background that a lot of these wrestlers come from, that you deal with, that you have to train with?
It's varied. It's all different walks of life. It's guys that have got money, guys that don't have money, students, doctors, lawyers, whatever. It's just,
Traffic on.
It's traffic cops. It's all different walks of life. It's, and the thing is like all these different walks of life, all these people that have got all these different stories and histories and demographic backgrounds, and when they come into a locker room, they get all put onto the same path where we will walk until we do not walk that path anymore. So, that's a difficult question because it's so varied. It's crazy.
Okay, so after that blue screen, we were talking about the backgrounds of the people and stuff. Yeah, if you look at the locker room, the diversity there, not giving away any secrets, but there's young guys still past us. That's wrestling. So diverse. I think that's what I like about it. But I also told someone after my first time that if they want to see how South Africa can look, come look at the locker room.
Yeah, well, that's worldwide, I guess. So
that's really for me example. So I want to say, if there's something apart from thousands in a rugby stadium, which is easy to like be together.
Yeah.
It's something different to be together with those guys, and you stay here, he stays there.
Yeah.
But the sweat that falls is the same sweat on the same mat, and that makes it really interesting. Another question I want to ask you as a coach, what's the biggest mistake young South African wrestlers make when they start out?
The biggest mistake, I would say, well, I would say there's a couple. You're talking about like from my locker room or in general? In general,
Yeah.
I can't really speak on a lot of the youngsters now out there. I haven't met a lot of them. Those that I've met, I could probably, like I said, it comes back to the same old thing. Calling yourself a pro wrestler after 6 months, thinking.
Let me reframe it a bit, then you can continue with that. What would you say to someone who's young, who's starting in wrestling, to not do? Mistakes they should not make. Doesn't matter where they go. As Coach Johnny Palazzio. If anybody looking at this podcast,
Someone that's in wrestling that
not in wrestling or in wrestling that's just started out, what advice would you give them? And mistakes you will tell them not to do that.
now and now do something else. No, for any of the youngsters that, first of all, that's in the game right now, that is training and that's still green, I would say, if you've been training under 6 months, if you haven't made it to a year in South African pro wrestling, please don't call yourself a professional wrestler, because that's insulting to the guys that's come before you. I know it's not their fault, and I know at the end of the day, looking back to where I was, if I had been training for 6 months and someone said to me, hey, do you want to go do a singles match? I would have been like, sure, yeah, why not? Because I wouldn't have known better. But that's on the promoter, once again. That's on the guy that's coaching them and promoting them. So, like, if you're starting out and if you are still very, very green, listen, there's guys out there that's been wrestling for 8 years that are green, if that makes any sense. Still not being able to do the fundamentals right. My biggest thing is just being humble, and just really appreciating the guys that have done the hard yards so that you could be where you are. And just don't take it for granted. Just don't take anything for granted. That's the biggest thing.
I think on another podcast we can maybe talk about wrestling culture and respect and all that stuff. You might like it, Babs, but I think for viewers it will be a lot interesting. We had times we used, that's ridiculous, but the way I respect the business has made me say stuff to you. You were like, what? And I'm like, no, that's how I feel about it. So we can maybe, in general, sometime talk about that. Not what you expect, but what's kind of the tradition in wrestling and what of it is part in South Africa. Because I think a lot of things that people are exposed to in wrestling today is much different than the exposure people had 30 years ago.
Oh, 100%.
And I think we can maybe speak about that as well. But like wrestling has changed, and the kayfabe thing has kind of gone away. Maybe for some better, maybe for some worse. But do you think, if you look at the South African wrestling scene, that there's a need, or there should be a clearly defined line between local heroes and villains? And if we use the terms some people will know, babyface, heel, is that still a thing in wrestling? Do people just decide, I like the guy or I hate the guy, doesn't matter what he does? Do you still think that line needs to be there?
Well, if it wasn't there, then what story are you telling? Like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, what story are you trying to tell? The very, very basic story that could ever be told, and I'm talking biblical times, is good versus evil. That is a story in itself. And I mean, if you've got guys in a locker room and you're telling them, the first match we're putting out tonight on our show, what are we going to do? It's always going to be a good guy versus a bad guy. I mean, that's the basic, when you start going to higher degree psychology, you start working bad guy, where you could work a match of two villains or two baby faces or whatever the case is. Then that becomes higher grade psychology. How are you going to work a match with two villains or two baby faces? Because it's easy to do bad guy and a good guy. So, I mean, when you're starting out and you are doing matches and you don't know if you're a good guy or a bad guy, you need to stop and ask a lot of questions. Where are you going with this whole thing?
Yeah, I fully agree. But I'm asking the question, and just to have you feel comfortable that I'm not saying it's not needed, but I think there's a trend internationally where people see big crowds at WWE, all the other companies, where they will sometimes boo the hero and cheer the villain. And personally, for me, sometimes I like seeing what they're doing, and then I'm like, this doesn't really make sense because this actually should have been the babyface winning, or
Yeah, but then you're gonna have to stop and look at all the elements that's
Yeah.
involved as to why.
yeah.
Why is it happening? Why is this whole
Maybe a question I have to can ask you, and that was like 2 years ago, kind of like a thing where the supporters, viewers influenced wrestling. Now, this is going to be an interesting question. How big a part is it in putting together your show, your matches? This isn't, you don't want to talk about it, tell me, but are you listening to your crowd with what they want? Now, I'm not talking about in-ring, because that's another psychology, but I'm talking about setting matches up, seeing who goes. Are you giving the audience what they want, or are you giving audiences what you hope they would want and appreciate? Or is it the combination? You understand what I'm trying to
I
ask?
guess I don't know exactly what you're saying. Look, AWA is in a very fortunate position because we don't have a crowd that comes and doesn't know what to expect. So when you've got a crowd, like when you're doing shows across the country, when you're going to Bloemfontein, Joburg, Durban, whatever, those people that are coming don't know what to expect. So you are trying to feed them. You got to feed them the breadcrumbs to the
Yeah.
trail to get to where they want to be. So you got to feed them that this guy's a bad guy, or this guy's a good guy, or cheer for this guy, or boo for this guy. So like I'm saying, us as AWA, we're very fortunate because we've got people that are coming to our shows that's walked the path with each character over like I've got people that have been watching me for 20 odd years, and they've seen me go from the hottest villain to the hottest babyface to everything in between. So they understand exactly when they come to the next show what they are going to see. So for when myself and Sean are setting up matches, we sit and we're like, okay, where are we going with this whole idea with this guy, or this tag team, or this and this and this and this? It's not a case of, I hope the crowd likes this, or we know what the crowd knows. So the crowd knows exactly when I come out, they cheer for me, or when Mike Xander comes out, they boo for him, or when whatever comes out, they know how to react because we've walked this path with them all this time. But like the funny thing is when I go to Durban or Joburg, I'm a bad guy. Love it. I will always be the bad guy. I love working as the villain. But then again, it's because I'm telling a story. The minute I walk out, I'm telling a story. I'm like, yeah, I could be a villain in Cape Town, but I'd be cheered. Like then I'll completely mess up the whole story because they'll still cheer for me. But when I'm outside of Cape Town,
So what you're saying is that there is still power in the crowd.
there's
Even if you go bad, you will still
there's power in the character,
Yeah,
not the crowd.
yes.
In
Okay.
the character that in Johnny Palazzio, there's power in that, because there was power in Sean Kun, because Sean would be the biggest villain anywhere in South Africa, and they would still cheer for him. That in itself. Listen, let me tell you, and like once again, I'm not here to toot my own horn or anything. I was one of the biggest villains you could ever possibly look at in South Africa. I was red hot. And it literally took Sean 15 minutes, less, probably like 5 minutes, to turn me from that heel into a babyface. It took him less than that. It took him one hug. That's all that it took for him to turn me. And that is the God's honest truth. It took him literally one hug to turn me. Now, if you're telling me that that is not power, then I have no idea, my friend, what is power. To turn a whole crowd, to sway them. They literally booed me when I walked out. The minute I climbed in the ring and he hugged me, it was my career as a bad guy was done. There was nothing that I could do wrong where they would ever boo me again. And if that is, like I say, if that in itself is not power, then I have no idea what is. You yourself heard what kind of reaction he got when he walked out there.
That's the biggest pop of the evening.
For someone that hasn't been active, for someone that hasn't, he didn't even do anything. He just literally came out. Now, if you're telling me that is not power,
That's power.
that is what pro wrestling is all about. It's that essence, that magic, that to go out of a curtain and people go from being completely not invested to being absolutely 1000% invested. It's just something that no movie can make. It's not something you can make up. It's not something that you can tell someone you have to do this. It's something that it's a natural reaction to seeing something that you love and cheering that. That is what the magic of pro wrestling is all about. Yeah. If you could bottle that and sell it, you would sell that as pro wrestling in a bottle.
Well, where there is a place where the audience does have power is on social media. So if you guys would do me the favor, and even if you don't like me, do it for Johnny Palazzio. Please like, subscribe on the YouTube channel, BaardBek Wrestling, where you're watching this. If you won't mind sharing it around, go to my TikTok. I'll put all the socials at the end of this video. Let's get this out. Drop us some questions. Maybe at the next round, Johnny and myself can talk about it. Or whoever's next on the podcast. Maybe the audience from AWA can tell me, who's the next wrestler you want to see sit across from me? It can be local, it can be national. We can try and see if we can work it out. But the aim of this podcast is for South African wrestling supporters and fans to learn a bit more about the industry. You will also learn a bit more about my journey to become a wrestler, as Johnny Palazzio puts me through my shortness of breath and running around. But please make sure to follow the socials. There will be a part 2 of this podcast coming out because we respect your time, and we will see you on the next one. Subscribe so you get the notification, ring the bell. Cheers, guys.